Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the third and final day of our second annual Cybersecurity Bootcamp. Today's sponsor is BOSL, and our speaker today is Mr. Martin Holze. He has more than 25 years experience in the IT and security industry. He offers consulting, auditing, and training services to various clients within the IT sector. We eagerly look forward to Mr. Holz sharing his knowledge with us. And as usual, if you have any questions during the presentation, you could save it till the end and we'll address it in the Q&A segment. So Mr. Holz, over to you.
Yeah, okay. Good evening or good afternoon. Good evening from my end, good afternoon at your side. I'm sitting on the other side of the Atlantic from you. So I want to talk about becoming a human firewall today. And I'm going to start with just introducing myself a bit further beyond what we've already heard. Martin Holze, my name. I'm originally from Germany, but don't live in Germany for 20 years anymore. Have a degree in physics in the 90s. Started then as an IT consultant, a freelance consultant. Been a trainer, as you can see, for a long time, starting in IT training, technical training, moving on into audit, information security, all these kind of things. And virtually do all of that stuff still. I don't really do technical training anymore because I'm technical enough as an auditor, but I'm not technical enough to teach the nitty-gritty of all the skills anymore. So I do a lot of information security and other management system assessing audits. I work for UCAS, the UK accreditation body. All that freelance. I'm running here in Lanzarote, where I live now, in the Canary Islands, a series called ISO in the Sun, which is training courses, most of it information security, management systems, business continuity, all these kind of things. So that's about a bit about me. Good. What we're up to here, just to give you a bit of agenda loosely, we're not strictly following that, but I've put a number of stuff together. So obviously, first I want to set a bit the context of where this human firewall belongs to. Then we want to see what it is. We want to see why it's crucial. We want to become a part of it, or how can we become part of it, and also how can we help improving it, which will be a bit me at the end also talking about career opportunities in that market, rather than just being the ones being part of that. And I've put here on the slide because, to be honest, I'm not too familiar with Zoom. I usually use Teams and things like that. But I generally, if there's questions or if you want to ask something, you can raise your hand or the likes. I'm not entirely sure how that works on Zoom or in the chat. As Marina just said, then we can pick it up from there.
I could moderate the chat, so if any questions come up, I'll just let you know.
Yep, that's great. Okay, because it's then I'm quite happy to feed them in, like, so it becomes a bit interactive, the whole thing. Good. So context. Obviously, all this information security elements come out of that context that we are living in a highly connected world. Everything in our life now is online somehow. Everything's in our life is connected with the internet. And of course, we have plenty data and information out there everywhere, which are addressed. So they're stored somewhere, they sit in the clouds, they sit on devices. And of course, they get shifted around all the time per email, through the internet, through tools like this, Zoom. And of course, it's crucially important that they are kept secure and they're not getting lost or stolen, manipulated, all these kind of things. And because we have so much data-driven society now, of course, there's also people who are quite interested in this, and so we're constantly under threat with our information. from both commercial and state-sponsored hackers who have different objectives, but in the end do similar things. So of course, you all will have come across ransomware. I mean, I think there's not a week, sometimes not a day passing where not the media are full of some reports of some company being encrypted and being held to ransom. And of course, that picture I put there on the side is one of these typical WannaCry things that often enough get shared in the media. So when you come back to your computer, you get this beautiful message and say, they got us. Of course, there is data theft. So ransomware is usually about extortion. People want to make money. And of course, for all kinds of reasons, sometimes it's simple commercial interest, but of course, it's also been reported widely in the media that terror groups finance themselves. It's even been a lot of talk about that, for example, countries like North Korea significantly make money with these kind of things to sponsor their own activities, like their nuclear weapon programs and things like that. Then we have things like data theft. Yeah? People are interested in our information. That could be personal information, that could be sensitive information in an organization, intellectual property, all these kind of things. And then we have the other way around. Various attempts of manipulating data. So the whole misinformation, what we see on the media quite often with where fact-checking goes on. It could also be that people try to manipulate financial records and all these kinds of things. So there's a whole lot of things that these attackers have an interest in. And finally, again, disruption and unrest. Yeah, if you think some of these big hacker attacks in recent years where public services being shut down, pipelines being shut down, and the likes. It all is part of potentially political activities, or sometimes you don't know if people just think, well, we want to show that it's possible. And of course, our data are also always under threat from accidental destruction. We all ever here and there delete something with that, oh shit, I didn't want to delete that. Of course, we have all kind of disaster situations, natural disasters of all kinds that can mean that we're losing information. Because of all that, and because there's so much in our economies depending on this, there's of course an increasingly regulatory requirements coming up, starting from international standards like ISO 27001, which is one of the standards I work a lot as a consultant, as a trainer, and for example, when I assess for UCAS, I assess certification bodies who certify companies against that. Then you have all the different regional, national regulations in the EU, for example, GDPR, which of course the whole data protection sector, which goes wider and wider and goes over in many other parts of the world as well, where data protection regulation is coming up, which is quite closely based on GDPR, because people appreciate that it's a model which has been quite thoroughly worked, and other people take interest in that, and in the end copy it, which is good. Then you get sector-specific stuff. In the finance sector, banking sector tends to be highly regulated, certain government environments, and it all is basically there to increase our information security, our cyber security. I always use these words interchangeably because cyber security is a bit the buzzword at the moment. Information security is a more general and original term, because we're going to see later down, cyber security is sometimes a bit more than just cyber. We want to look at things, what you can do as part of your human firewall outside the internet, because they're still alive out there. And of course, I've just said it's aimed at data protection, so making sure that our personal data, which are heavily featuring in the internet nowadays, that they are kept under control and they don't come into the wrong hands. So, and in that sense, information security is always about confidentiality and integrity and availability. It's this trio. CIA triad is quite often called because everybody can remember CIA, everybody knows what the CIA is, and it's a nice synonym in that sense. So we're always looking at making sure that data are confidential, but also it's important that integrity of data is kept. If data are not accurate anymore, if data have been manipulated, wrong decisions will be made on that. So that can have fatal consequences in all kinds of shapes and forms. Think about being refused banking facilities, credits or so, because somebody's played around with your financial records, and then the bank suddenly think, oh, the bank has a program which is wrong, and suddenly thinks, okay, no, you're not getting any money from us. And you can come up with many, many more examples. And finally, availability, really, really important. It's one of the things how places like Amazon and so have made their reputation because of the high availability of these systems. You don't want to go on there and find that their website is not working and not able to order something. And I see that still happening all the time, that then when I need a system, it's not available. And that's the information security issue as well. Really what information security consists on, and that's where we're coming over to the human firewall in a moment, is it's technical and non-technical measures. So there's all these kind of things that big companies do to secure systems, and certain things we do even on our private systems, or they're done by default by the vendors. If you buy a Windows machine, if you buy an iPhone or so, there's certain technical security features already there and preset. But then there's non-technical measures which are just as important, because the technology can only do so much. And that's what really the human firewall is about. And that's what I want to talk about predominantly today, is this thing around the technology. What is our role? What are we doing? What do we need to do? How do we behave to make sure it all works? Yeah, so that's why I put that here together again. We have these security technologies. So think about access control. You need to log into a system. Think about security updates that you get on your computers, on your mobile devices, and which you hopefully use and install. Think about anti-malware, antivirus, these kind of things. Think about backing up your data, and we come back to that a bit later as well. And that's all fine and good, but the problem is, as a humans, we stay always the weakest link, because we do silly things inadvertently. Some people, of course, as we've just seen with the hackers, deliberately. But my experience over 20 plus years in auditing is a lot of stuff that goes wrong doesn't go wrong for ill will, because it just goes wrong because people forget things, people react the wrong way to something, and that creates at least as much damage as all these attackers. Only the attackers like to prey on our weakness there and try to exploit them. And that's where this human firewall comes in. The human firewall, I explain in a moment what I mean by that, is basically there to strengthen that weak links that we are, as humans are. So what's this human firewall about? It's about adopting secure behaviors, so that with our behavior, we support the technology and we make sure that things stay secure by raising awareness, first of all. If we're not aware of the problems that we can cause, we can't really avoid them. Then being vigilant. We always need to be on guard. And basically it all comes down to think before you do something. Too many people do too many things too quickly, and then afterwards regret what they've done. So sit back, take a moment, think about, is that appropriate to do, and that way you create this protection, this human firewall. And there's of course experts out like myself and many others who can help foster that, improve that, get you on your toes, show you things, explain you things, make you aware, and help you along. But in the end, the actual actioning of a human firewall comes down to everyone doing their part, to everyone contributing, to everyone doing the right thing, and that way together we build that human firewall. So just to stress that again, because I think it's vitally important for this whole subject, is information security just can't succeed without the human firewall. Technology alone can't make our information secure. That's been long and hard enough tried, and it's reality over the years. No matter how secure we make our systems, how much we harden them, how much technology we bring on, to secure it. In the end, if we don't have that human aspect, that human firewall, then we will not succeed. So it is vitally important, and I spent on a lot of consultancy projects a lot of time about awareness, talking to people, um, what to do, what not to do. We're doing tests. We see a bit of that in a moment as well. Um, to deliberately check if people have the right behavior, and if they tap into the trap, then to go back and say, here, you need to look after that. That's important, and explain to people why it is. That's the really important stuff, because we don't want people to think, oh, here comes these information security guys again. They always go on my nerves. No, it's about people understanding why it's important and why it's in their own best interest, and of course, it's in the interest of everyone around, their families, their friends, their companies where they work, and. So it's really about everyone's job to do the right thing, not to compromise security, and to therefore be that human firewall and create that whole wall that then protects our information. So let's look at some secure behaviors that we can build. So what is practical activities that belong to that human firewall? And I will not pretend that we're going to cover all and everything that you can think about, but I've pulled together kind of like what I think is crucial bits that we really need to keep in mind on, and that I see over and over going wrong, and where I see we always need to reinforce that. That's another part of that as well, of that awareness. We need to keep going on this. People forget. We all forget, and we all will fall into some trap at some point, just because we all have busy lives. We have lots on our mind, and we tend to forget things again until we really kind of get them in us, and it's like second nature to us. But that's a long way to go. So I put four keywords here, and have a couple of slides on each of them to show what we're having. One thing is called spot the fish. We talk about physical security, device hygiene, and communications hygiene as four areas. So we start with spot the fish. You might have or come across the subject of phishing mails. It's one of the big things that goes around everywhere, and is one of the major entry point for ransomware and malware in general, where basically the bad guys send emails around and try to trick you into doing something, which in the end then has adverse effects for you or others. So I've put a example in there. There's lots and lots of tools, and that is one of the things I just mentioned, where you can do these kind of fish mails as a test. So they are of course disarmed, but they have exactly the same appearance as the real phishing emails. And it's about getting people on guard, and these tools then allow people to report them, and that way to say, thanks, you've got it, you picked it up. Or if they actually fall for the traps in there, then you get this kind of WannaCry skull and bone thing to say, we got you. Yeah, and that is in its own right not yet a problem. It's a problem when it happens repeatedly, because it's about learning that and getting your senses sharpened for that. So what happens in these phishing emails is quite often they urge you something, you need to do something important quickly, it's really urgent, and or they tease you with something, and quite often it's this kind of, it's just too good to be true. And we're way past this bit, even though occasionally I see them, and there's usually nothing in this silly emails of some prince in Nigeria who's left 10 million or 10 billion dollars and now has to distribute them, and where they merely have to harvest their contact details. But that's a very lightweight thing. What happens here, and you can see this in the screenshot on the right hand side, there is these red areas, these so-called red flags. So that's the things to look out for. So when you look at the top, you can see you want to look when you get these kind of emails if it looks like a weird and wonderful email address. If it's misspelled, I've just the other day through a colleague got a really interesting one passed on. And if you look on my LinkedIn or my Facebook or so, you will see it. I posted it on there, where actually in an email address of a bank, they misspelled it. in one character, that one character that was misspelled looked like an A, but it actually wasn't an A. And so you have to be really careful with these kind of spelling mistakes or weird and wonderful things. Yeah, and then you see here in the actual email, it talks about that your access has been restricted. I always have to laugh when I get these emails over here and there in that my Bank of America account has been restricted. And I say, I don't even have one. So how can it be restricted? So it's very simple things like this where you just have to, when people kind of try to push you, sit back and say, hold on, and then no, that's not happening. Yeah. Um, and then of course they urge you to click a link. You have a button in there, and you can then you should always do that. Yeah, hover over these links. You can even do that on a mobile phone. Hover over the links, and it will pop up and it show you the link. And if that link looks suspicious, if that, for example, doesn't go back to the website that you expect, you get one. A common one is with Amazon as well. That people pretend they send you a message from Amazon, and it actually is a phishing mail. So when you look on there, then you suddenly see it doesn't go back to Amazon.com or .co.uk or .de or wherever you deal with Amazon, but it goes back to something else. And sometimes it can be a simple one that it just says, instead of Amazon.com, it says Amazon/com.com. Then you already know, no, that's not Amazon. So you really, really want to be on guard with that, and you can't be careful enough. Yeah? So there's all these kind of red flags in there. And as I said, it's all about they want to lure you to, for example, log into a system, which might look like your online banking system, which might look like your Microsoft account, which might look like your Amazon account, but it's a spoofed site, and that way they steal your login details, your password, or they might even steal credit card information or the likes. And the other thing that can quite often happen is that they infect your device, your own ones, your organization's devices, because once you click on that link, it downloads some malware and installs it on the machine. Be it a keylogger, so then they record every single keystroke you do, and pick that up, or any other things, yeah, including ransomware. And that's why it's so important on emails, on sometimes on websites, you get things like that as well. Yeah, that's why I put it in big red there. Think before you click. That's what it's really all about. And you can't just be vigilant enough. There's so many things going around, and it's happened to me as well that I fell for something, and lucky enough, I've never had a major incident. But sometimes things are so well done that you don't realize that, or it happens to come up in a context where you say, yeah, it makes sense, I'm just doing that, and then you realize, no, but not that one. So you really, really want to be careful, because it's one of the biggest problem, and that's why a lot of companies nowadays do a lot of phishing campaigns where they do, like with this example here, send things around to people um, to test if people realize that and actually recognize that. And that way, when it's a real fish mail coming in, they will as well report that, which is also important. If you get something like this reported to somewhere, if it's a company, you will have some kind of mechanism. If it's privately, sometimes it can be helpful to go back to the real company and say, basically, are you aware that there are scams running around in your name? And they can take measures against it. It's don't just delete it and forget it. It's if you've spotted it, is great. Other people might not have spotted it and might fall for it. So that's a really, really crucial thing to do. By the way, another interesting example you want to look out on these things, I've seen that quite a few times, is that just in these emails, simple details are wrong. Either there's typos in there, or a really interesting one I've seen quite a few times now with clients is that these phishing emails pretend to come from the CEO or for some top management member. And you know, out of the culture, these guys will always email in a very personal way because it's a very personal company, or it's a very formal company, so they will be in a very formal company style whole thing. So if it's this a personal thing, and you get that email, and then at the bottom is your CEO, you know your CEO always has greetings, Peter, then you know straight away it's definitely not from him because it's not his style. He wouldn't do that. Yeah, and likewise, if you if your CEO will always uh, end with kind regards, Dr. Martin Holze, and I'm not a doctor, just making that up now, and then suddenly you get something from say all the best for Martin. That's weird. That's not him. And it's very small indications that often give it away that there's something at odds. So generally, it's important to be very suspicious about what you get in emails because there's so much of that stuff running around. It's unbelievable. And especially when you're in working in a company, you get more exposed to. I have clients, for example, in biotech, and because it's an innovation industry, they're of particular interest to hackers because they want to uh, extort information out of there. So you get a lot of weird and wonderful attempts there to get people to click something. So that was spot the fish. Then we have physical security, a very really simple thing, but often done wrong. Because we have all so many devices, mobiles, laptops, everything. Yeah? It's important that we take care of them. I'm just looking. I think no, I thought I slipped a slide. No, I haven't. So for these devices that you have, yeah, always make sure, no matter where you are, and it doesn't matter whether it's out in the pub or it's on the train or it's at home or in the company, never leave your devices unlocked. So that photo I put in the top. Yeah, you come past the computer and it's open. I can do everything with that computer. I've done that often enough on audits where I can do it. You cannot always do it. You need to be careful with these things because in some environments it's almost classed as a criminal offense. But it's a great awareness activity, and I've done it often in the past, and many colleagues have done it in the past. Is if you find a computer open like this, you go onto the machine. Open the open Outlook and write an email to all staff and say, there's free coffee and cake on Peter today at 3 o'clock. Yeah, or you can play around with this as a keyboard combination in Windows. I think it's Control Alt Delete and the cursor keys, and then your screen falls around. And I've seen that in a call center done, and a supervisor done that because he says, well, I've told them often enough they need to lock their screens. And if they don't, they just do that. And when they come and say, my computer is broken, I say, well, go to the help desk. And he says, it's amazing that people then never do it again. And that's part of raising awareness in these kind of, you can preach so much, but sometimes you need to come up with ideas what you can otherwise do to foster that people. And it's really not ill-meaning, it's really to get people on their toes. The next thing I've put in here, and with a lot of devices nowadays, that's standard, but in some cases you can also switch it off, and please don't. Yeah, make sure that your devices are encrypted. If you nowadays buy a Windows laptop, in most cases it automatically has BitLocker or something like that. On some of the home versions, some of the very cheapy machines don't because they technically are still limited on that. But in corporate environment, you have that. If you buy an iPhone, it's automatically encrypted. As far as I know, most Android phones are now automatically encrypted. And it means if such a device gets lost or stolen, then all the person who gets it in their hand just has a piece of metal. I recently had a case at a client where a colleague left his phone on the train and only realized in the office. The phone never reappeared again, but because it was locked, it was encrypted. We said, well, the risk is very limited that somebody gets to any data on that phone. It's merely an inconvenience, and of course, if you have a lot of data on there that you don't have anywhere else, then it's more than an inconvenience. And finally, don't leave your devices unattended, please. Because I travel a lot, I see that so often. And I see that even with auditor colleagues, especially those who don't come from information security, but say colleagues who do quality or environmental management or things like this, who typically are not as savvy on the information security side, that they sit somewhere in a restaurant and just leave their stuff, their mobile or everything lying on the table to go to the toilet. I get vice versa sometimes slight weird looks because I quite often sit in the evening after my orders or so somewhere in a restaurant, have my laptop with me, get some work done, and then eventually I will fold that laptop over, put it under my arm, and go to the toilet with it. I will not leave that lying on the table. Of course not. Yeah, so things get lax very quickly. And aside from the inconvenience to me, again, there is at least a risk that something could be that way stolen. Yeah, and some thieves are only after the hardware. Other people will be after more important things. And the same goes, by the way, for paperwork. Yeah, please don't leave any interesting documents lying around, not on your desk in the office when you go home, not anywhere in public, not in your car. The amount of cases over the years where sensitive and quite sensitive information has been stolen out of cars, for example, and you know full well it's some journalists who steal them because suddenly they turn up in the Daily Mail or or on CNN or something like this. Yeah, and it's stupid to leave stuff like that lying around, and it's dangerous. It gives all these people who have some interest, who want to attack us, who want to get to our information, gives them an entry point. So don't help them that easily. So the next part to physical security, and you can tell it's all about our behaviors, what we do with things, and that's really what this human firewall is over and over again about. Um, the next thing uh, is about minding your environment, especially if you're in public, but also in private. Yeah. For example, I'm sitting here in my home office, window open. There is nothing behind me really, so it's not that critical. But if it was somewhere, and in the beginning of COVID, when a lot of people started remote working, we had to raise that awareness. That we said, please close your windows when you have sensitive conversations with colleagues. You don't know who's listening through the garden. Yeah? And it's of course also more important when you sit somewhere in a bar or a restaurant or in a train, um, and have conversations on the phone, to be mindful who else might be there and listen to things, and therefore, for example, avoid confidential information again, yeah, or word things in a way that somebody else can't necessarily pick them up. We have that on a regular basis when we have big conferences with all our UCAS assessors, because we are a very small part of the team that do information security. There's always the announcement at some point very early on that some of the seniors will say, and please remember when you sit later together and over a pint, and talk about things. And of course, we want you that we bring you together so you exchange experience, but please, no names. Yeah, don't sit there in the bar and rum it on about some client where you've done an audit and how stupid they are, and throw all the names all over the place. You just don't know who also sits in the bar. And that's very interesting information. I didn't know that these companies are so silly. Yeah, so don't give people these opportunities to get their hands on information that is not for them. Then part of that is, again, especially in public, when you sit on a Wi-Fi, make sure it's ideally a protected one, because the unprotected ones are very easy to intercept, and use a VPN, so a virtual private network. You get all these VPN clients. For example, I use Bitdefender as an anti-malware on my machines, and that comes with a VPN client. So you create a secure connection from your machine to whatever you do on the internet. In big companies, they often will say, to get to our systems, you have to use that VPN and nothing else. Else we won't let you in. And it basically is all about, again, shielding the information that we transfer. And finally, another one, which I still see way too little, when you run around with your laptop and your mobile, on the mobiles it's still a bit trickier to get, but on laptops it's common practice. Use a privacy filter. What I was trying to show on this photo there, and I think you can kind of guess it. This privacy filter means you need to look straight into the thing. If you look from the side, you can't see. Yeah, so it's the same machine that before had the open Google here on the slide before. Yeah, and from the side you can't see that. And these privacy filters you can usually get in all kind of forms where you stick them on the screen, but you can take them off when, for example, you sit in a team in a meeting room and you want other people to be able to look on your screen as well because you don't have a big screen or something like that. Be mindful of that. And the other thing that always gets me on mobiles as on other mobile devices is how people just happily hold conversations on loudspeaker. I mean, the amount of things that I hear, I think I don't even want to hear that. Yeah, use a headset. Yeah, and on your mobile phone you can have a headset as well. That's not a problem. There's plenty of options around. And then at least if somebody listens in, they only hear the one side of the conversation. That makes it much, much harder to work out what's going on. So that's kind of physical security. So everything that we do out and about, yeah, always keep a mind on and say, is that am I breaching that human firewall? Am I giving away information where I think actually I don't want to share them? And how can I protect myself against it? So then I've said the heading device hygiene. So and when I talk about device hygiene, I really mean any and all kinds of devices. So you have static computers, good old desktops, of course, in companies, you still get that. A lot of people have laptops now. We have our mobiles, we have our tablets, we have this whole IoT world coming on, like your ring bell that you can monitor from your mobile phone. So if the delivery guy comes to your door and rings the bell, your phone, and even if you're hundreds of kilometers away, you can still see who's at the door. You can use that as alarm systems. You have all these watches and all these kind of things. So this picture just gives just an idea how much there is. And all these devices we need to be careful with and keep a close eye on, that they are managed in a secure way. So what's device hygiene about? It starts with keep your devices up to date and secure. I've mentioned earlier security updates. On Windows, you get regular monthly updates. On iOS, you get that. On your phones, depending on what it is, sometimes it's less regularly. It depends on what kind of systems you have and what you have in there. But make sure when that pops up and you're like, oh, another security update, is really, really important, because that way the providers and the suppliers patch their systems and make sure that new vulnerabilities, new weaknesses in these systems are actually closed and can't be exploited by hackers anymore. If you don't do that, you make yourself very vulnerable, and therefore it's also important to do that quickly. Don't drag that away. Try to do it as quickly as you can, because the quicker you do it, the more protected you are. The same goes for all your apps on your mobile devices. Most iOS and Android have these features that they automatically do that whenever you're on a Wi-Fi, for example. Or you can even, more and more people have so much data now on their mobile phones that you can do it on the go. As long as you have a good internet connection, you wouldn't even know that your phone in the background updates your applications. And it's the same feature again. It's about patching security gaps that these applications have, and patching exploits where people have found out, oh, I can do something silly with that application, and that way get to your data. And finally, mobile devices never last forever. Computers never last forever. There's a point where these run out of support. Eventually, you get no more security updates, and then latest it's time to replace them. Most of the time, if you think about it, your mobile phone by that time is old and lame, and you sit there and, oh, come on, get in gear. And the memory is running full and everything. So if that's not reason enough, yeah, to buy a new one, well, think about the security. If you have these old, completely outdated phones, you're extremely vulnerable. So the second part of the device hygiene is protection of your device. That starts with malware protection. It's getting better, but I still see a lot of people who, especially on their mobile phones, on their smartphones, don't have malware protection. I've started that very early when I had my first smartphones, because I've always used from a corporate environment that, of course, you have antivirus, and nowadays you call them more anti-malware, or you call them EDR, and what all your shiny names you will get for it. But it's all about basically having some piece of software on the machine that will keep an eye on if there's anything strange and weird and wonderful happening, and blocking activity. So if you actually, because you've clicked on a fish mail, you got some malware downloaded, hopefully your malware protection should pick that up straight away. If it's something very new that maybe the malware protection doesn't know yet, again, that's why you need to update on a regular basis, it might slip through. Yeah, more and more they are clever enough that they even recognize things that they don't know because they recognize the pattern, they recognize the idea what's going on. And so you want to have that. You want to have these, and often that comes with these malware protection features. You want to have these remote features on your phone. If you really lose your phone, that you can lock it, you can wipe it, you can reset it. Usually you can locate it as well, yeah, and you find, it's fallen behind the sofa, silly me. So all these kind of things you want to have. And of course, what goes with there as well, only use trusted sites. Don't go on some weird and wonderful websites and download stuff for that, yeah, especially when they offer you all these freebies. These freebies usually are not quite as free as they sound. So be really, really careful. Only, for example, get your apps on from Google Store, from Apple Store, from these trusted environments. There can be bad things in between as well, but the chances are significantly lower, because Apple anyway always had a very stringent program of checking what they put on their stores, and even Google has meanwhile caught a lot on that and is getting much better with that. So again, be careful with weird and wonderful sources, websites, app stores, and because you likely expose yourself to malware. So you see, it's all about like what we do. The technology is all there, but if we don't use it, then the technology all is nothing worse. Right, then we have, as next part of device hygiene, we have protect access. So of course, don't write, and it happens still, not as often anymore as it used to, but it still happens. Don't write down your passwords, your passphrases, and also don't reuse them. Don't have the same password or pins the same on all devices, on all applications, on all websites that you're using. Yeah, and of course that gets a bit tricky to manage, because how are you going to remember all these different passwords? So you get these password managers, like for example, KeePass is a free tool that you can get on your laptop, you can get on your phone. I have all my passwords in such a KeePass safe, and I can just sync them between them. I actually don't put them in the cloud because that's where I don't trust the cloud. I just have them locally on my laptop, and then they get synced locally on my mobile phone just with a cable, good old style. And that way I have all these sensitive data, passwords, and all kind of other things on me when I need them. And I can just copy paste them from there into the website that I want to log in. And don't need to remember all that. And then they can be as weird and wonderful, the passwords, and you can just use totally random passwords. The other thing that you might have come across, because it's getting more and more common, is multi-factor authentication. So all these features where when you put your username and password in a system, in a website or something, you have something separate, some token, or usually something on your mobile phone again, which then asks you to confirm that is really you. And it's this idea of that it comes through multiple ways. So if somebody's stolen your password, they can go, yeah, on your online banking, but they can't log in because they would have to go steal your phone as well, and confirm that access. So you get a Microsoft Authenticator, you get Duo, you get all kind of these tools. And of course, especially in banking, where regulation requires that, meanwhile, they do that. Microsoft does it with a lot of tools. And in whenever you deal with companies, you find more and more they will do that. That they say the internet access requires this kind of multi-factor authentication. And sometimes you can choose to set it up, and I would always strongly suggest to do that. And of course, we are already on the move again, and that's another part in this whole human firewall thing. The wall constantly moves; it always changes, and we're moving toward completely passwordless systems. So we're using biometrics, or for example, you register your mobile or your laptop as a trusted device. You have trusted locations. You get all these features where systems realize, hold on, why is he logging in from North Korea today? That's weird. He's never in North Korea. And you can tailor them and all kind of things. If you take platforms like Microsoft 365, they have extreme strong security features. There are so many you actually need experts to maintain them, because you're talking about thousands and thousands of settings. But you can control all kind of things, and big corporations start doing that increasingly. And that's why you might, for example, if you go on holiday and you haven't told anyone, you might suddenly realize, I can't get to that system because I'm not in a shady environment, but I'm not where I'm normally at. Nobody knows that I'm elsewhere. So it could be that somebody stole my device and then logs in from Mauritius, rather than me on holiday there. And of course, in a work environment, you can always say, well, if you're on holiday, you shouldn't be working anyway. You should enjoy your holiday. But in some jobs, it doesn't work that way, of course. And then you need to manage that. So it's all about basically uh, uh, raise the hurdles and make it harder for the attackers to get through and to do something. And that's part of our activities to contribute to that, and not getting annoyed where it is. These features are there for a reason. It's important to understand that it's part of a better protection, because simple passwords are long since known to not be good enough. Just a password protection is so easily broken by all kind of means. So you want more security in your systems. Another different aspect of device hygiene, which is very often forgotten, and again, where is something, especially in the private domain, we can do a lot, and we need to do much more, is what I said earlier. What if your device gets stolen? Are all the data gone with that on there? Are all your precious photos on there gone? Are all your emails or so gone, or what's happening? So think about a backup facility. So how do you back up your data? There's all kind of secure cloud solutions, OneDrive and the likes. It depends on what kind of data you have. That's an assessment you want to make and say, do I want to stick some on the cloud? I just said I don't put my password safe in the cloud. I'm pretty sure it's pretty safe. It has quite good security standards, but just the fact that it sits there and it could be stolen, and eventually with brute force, you always get them broken somehow. So I say, nope, something like that doesn't go in the cloud. I just move them between devices. I have an external hard drive where I do backups on a regular basis because I'm a one-man show as a freelancer. I don't have that huge data turnover that I would have an automated backup running every night as you would have it at a company. In a company, people would make sure that your data are secured every night, provided that you've put them in the right place. Sometimes people store things locally on their machine, and that usually doesn't get backed up. And somebody will have told you that probably, but you've probably forgotten it. And then once your machine in the office has died, you said, good now. all my precious work from the last 3 weeks is gone. So you want to make sure that these are put in a secure place. Also, having these disconnected backups is a very helpful thing, because if you really get caught by a ransomware attack, that's your best insurance to get your stuff back. Because if your backup sits on a completely separate device, which the ransomware can't get to and can't encrypt, then once you got a fresh system, you can just say, okay, just flatten the whole system, make it completely from scratch, set back to factory settings, scan the hell out of it and make sure there's really nothing left on it, and then you bring your external device and put your data back on, and you haven't really lost much. Or you've lost maybe a few days of work, but that can, most of the time, you can live with that. So in that sense, that's why I put that keyword in their business continuity. Yeah, in big companies, that is one of the most important part now, to make sure we have good backups. So if a company gets encrypted by ransomware, they can reasonably sit back and say, fine, we have a massive job on us now to flatten all the devices, because the ransomware tends to eat its way through the networks. So it affects one machine, and that's what I meant with the phishing earlier. It affects your machine, and then from there it spreads through the network in your company. So it can be quite a big task to bring to clean all these machines and basically bring them back to factory settings and store them fresh. But at least your crucial data haven't been destroyed. And the other way of protecting your data is clean up after you. So throw things away, things that you don't need anymore, delete them. Yeah? If it's paper, then please not in the bin, put them through a shredder, get them or burn them. That's probably the even better solution. Might not be the most environmental solution, but once you burn your paper copies, you can definitely not do anything with. Even with a shredder, there is techniques where you can reconstruct documents if they're not shredded fine enough. If you have data on your devices, or even sometimes on a piece of paper, think about if you can minimize the data, and that word comes out of data protection, but it goes the same for other environments, by masking. So do you really need to have the full credit card number written down somewhere, or is it enough? And you're going to see that on a lot of websites that will just say, they will just give you the last 4 digits of the credit card that you've registered at some point. Yeah, that's a way of protecting your data, because the last 4 numbers, no hacker can really do much with that. But for you, it's enough to say, yeah, that's that credit card or that credit card or that bank card or something like this. So it all comes down to this idea of what's not there can't be compromised. As simple as that. So don't keep data floating around that you don't need anymore. Saying that, I need a drop of water. So, and the last dimension in this is communications hygiene. And again, it's about being aware of risks and being mindful what you share. Starts off with the whole social media domain. A lot of people are very mindless what they share on social media, and it doesn't matter whether it's LinkedIn or Facebook, so whether it's professional or non-professional platforms, and of course that mixes anyway, or Twitter, Instagram, or so. But be mindful what you share there. When it comes to text, I always have the very simple bottom line to say, if you're happy to shout what you're just going to write there down the main street in your town as loud as you can, put it on there. If you wouldn't do that, don't put it on Facebook because it will be there, it will stay there. The other thing is you can have accidental disclosures. For example, in photos, be careful when you take photos that these photos don't include something that you didn't want to share. It's one of the big pitfalls that happens in commercial environments, that people take photos at some company event, and before you know it, there is maybe some poster with some sensitive information in the photo and gets happily shared over the social media world. Yeah. Sometimes simply giving away your location can be interesting. I'm not too worried for myself because I'm constantly on the move. But for certain things, it can be maybe unwise to give away where something is located. And that might sound innocent that moment, but for a hacker who's interested in a certain thing, they might piece things together. And coming back to the phishing thing, that's what they then call spear phishing, where they really spend a lot of energy of collecting information together to then attack people exactly at the right point. And don't think for one moment these attacks only go through top management. They can go through every normal person who that way compromises the company, and they don't need to get to the CEO to get to the information. Right? So it's good to be careful there. Of course, when you're on the internet, make sure that you use websites with secure connection. So you can see that the symbols that are put here on the right on the slide indicating HTTPS, so secure HTTP connection. If you have a website that is just HTTP and it asks you to enter any information like a password or so, never ever do, because it's unprotected. It goes fully transparent over the internet. Everybody can read with it. And it's very easy to intercept these connections. If it's a HTTPS connection, if it is properly maintained, if it has a valid certificate and everything on there, then I would never say it can't be broken. Everything can be broken eventually, but it makes it much, much, much harder to intercept that. And this intercepting, of course, creates these eavesdropping things. So where people listen into you. And that's what hackers do as well. They try to intercept your communications and get the right information. Good. And of course, email. Email is a wonderful thing, and many people are way too mindless on that. What I see gets sent via open email, and normal email is open. Unfortunately, it's a feature that's been missed when email was invented, and it's still not really getting there. That we're changing that. It's probably one of the biggest mishaps in IT. That email is completely unprotected. Is again often goes via unencrypted connections. So it easily is possible to intercept and pick information out. So you don't want to send any sensitive information in a normal email, be it a password, be it a credit card number, or things like this. There is secure email features, but often they're a bit clumsy to use. One solution is to put the sensitive information in a file that you password protect, but please don't use Office password protection. That is long known to be easy broken. But if you use something like zip files that you can password protect, then that is a way. So you want to make sure that you protect these files. And then in the email, it just says, "Hi, Peter, here's the information you wanted to have." And yeah, well, everybody can read that because it's not going to be that easy. And again, of course, use good, sensible passwords, not something that somebody can guess, like password or something silly, or your name or something like that. But something that is a bit more sophisticated, and send that password through a different medium, for example, through an SMS to the colleague who's getting that protected file. And the other thing, of course, is you get all these file transfer tools like usendit.com and these kind that goes through websites that are specific secure transfer sites where you can upload the files and they go through a secure internet connection, get it uploaded. The other site gets an email saying there's something waiting for you, and they have to go on there and download it from there. That is a much safer version. Good. And finally, conversations again. We already touched on that. Yeah. So always, I think I can't stress that enough. A lot of people think in information security too much about electronic and IT security. There is a vast amount of things around that has nothing to do with IT whatsoever, which is just as important. And for example, the whole conversation thing is one of these areas. It doesn't matter whether it's on the phone, it doesn't matter where you sit next to each other in Starbucks. I happen to fly a lot. The amount of conversations that I pick up by accident, and if I would listen harder, I would pick up more, where business people sit on an airplane and just discuss their latest business dealings, and I get every single information that I want if I want to. Yeah. So don't do things like this. And of course, in some environments, you speak a bit quieter. That makes it more difficult to listen into. And also, again, think about what you say before you say it. Do you have to read out the credit card number or a telephone number of somebody who's maybe doesn't really want to share that with everyone? Can you not code that in some way so that the person you're talking to knows exactly what you're talking about, but you haven't given away? So you can do an awful lot things by just being mindful with that. Good. And so that's a range of aspects that all belongs to that human firewall. As I said, there is certainly more things. For example, one thing I haven't talked about is all these other silly attempts, like you find a USB stick lying around somewhere. Please don't put it into your machine, because it's probably, and especially when it says top secret or HR data, yeah, don't put that into your machine, because it's highly likely infected. Give that to experts who can deal with that. If it was really a colleague who left it fall out of their pocket, then let people take care of that and make sure that he doesn't do that again. Yeah, but quite often these things are placed as a threat. So it's all these kind of things. Be vigilant about what people hand you. If it's sounds too interesting, it sounds too good to be true, it probably is that. So in that sense, all these elements come together, and what I would say for all these activities was really important: be consistent. Don't try to distinct your private life and your work life, for example. Yeah, get into the habit of doing things in the right way. Even if your work life and your private life is very much discoupled, mine is not, as a one-man band. Yeah, it is inevitably overlaps constantly. But even if you can separate it more, don't try to live one life here and another life over there. It's much easier if you be consistent all over the board. Left alone, what you learn at work, what's good practice, is good practice for you privately as well, because it protects you privately as well. You don't want to have your bank account emptied by a hacker. That probably hurts you much more than it hurts your company if their bank account gets hacked. Then likewise, and I've touched a few times on that, it doesn't matter whether you're in public, whether you're at home, whether you're at the office. Yeah, apply the same pattern. Some people have the silly idea of oh, I don't need to lock my screen when I'm at home. No, do it. It's something that's been discussed a lot during COVID. If you have a laptop from your company and you work from home, or anything else that is given to you to use, maybe you work at a university, you work, you have things like that. There is information on there you don't want to share, not even with family members, and you certainly don't want your wee brother hammer around on your laptop and delete your data or destroy your data. Simple things like this. So same procedures wherever you are. And finally, lead by example. Yeah? If people start doing the right thing, the habit goes through. And of course, in my situation as a professional, it's even more so important that I lead by example. But everybody needs to lead by example. Set an example. And if you see friends and colleagues doing silly things, nudge them gently, friendly. Yeah, don't police them, but just say, "You sure you want to do it this way? Do you realize that can create this and that?" Because you might have got it already, other people maybe have not got it And of course, I've said already that human firewall is moving all the time. So keep up. The bad guys never sleep. Yeah, unfortunately, they always come up with new tricks. So stay vigilant. Keep your eyes open. Is there something new coming up where you say that's a weird one? Um, for example, what still happens, and I haven't mentioned that in the slide specifically, is that you get this interesting phone calls, yeah, where somebody calls you and said, "Oh, here's Microsoft. I think there's a problem with your machine. We need to log on your machine." No, you don't, because Microsoft doesn't do things like that. Yeah. So again, it's the same kind of phishing techniques that doesn't just work with email, it works in other environments as well, and especially through phone conversations. If you get some weird and wonderful phone call where you think that's not right, then think it's not right and act accordingly. And finally, and I think that's very, very important as well. And as I said, I come a bit onto the side of if you enjoy this and you want to make a job out of it, it's very important to keep that in mind. Um, Failing is okay. It's not a problem if people get it wrong. That happens. We all get things wrong. We only learn if we get things wrong, but we need to learn from it. And it's that concept that sits in management systems, which is called continual improvement. We're not expecting to be perfect in one go. We will never ever be perfect. But if things go wrong, we want to sit back and say, hold on, why did that go wrong? What can I do in future that I don't run into that thing again? Yeah, because it was annoying, it caused damage, it cost me a lot of stress, and I don't really need that next week again. Yeah, so it's perfectly fine when things go wrong. They will always go wrong. You can try your hardest to be perfect. That will just never work. uh, keep that attitude in mind. It's about continually improving all these activities. Good. As I said, I wanted to talk a bit about, towards the end of this, also about the career aspect of this. So the human firewall, as I said, in the first instance, is something we all need to learn and we need to do in our life. And nobody pays us for that. It's for our own good. It is for the good of those people we're living with, we're working with, that we adopt these strategies. But of course, there is a huge field of work to improve that, to foster that, to teach that, to develop that. And if you enjoy things and if you like some of the stuff I've been talking about, say, oh, that's actually interesting. That sounds a cool thing to work with. I can only encourage you to do so because there is really worldwide a demand for security, information security professionals. I get inundated with requests for projects. I sometimes get projects where I'm trying to find people where I think I would love to do it, but my day only has 24 hours as well. I need a few hours sleep. And maybe sometimes the stuff that is where I'm kind of too senior for it, and the money I want to be paid, people will say no. So it's good to have people in who come into the scene. And what's important, it's about technical and non-technical activities. So you don't necessarily need to be an IT freak. There's many other activities as well. That you can have. We need people who design security. We need people who operate security in companies. Yeah, doing all these things. What I've talked about. Running backups, monitoring backups, testing that these backups are working. Can I restore really? Do I just believe I can restore a system? No, I need to try it out. We need people who do that. We need people who design security architectures and say, what's the right way to do, for example, this multi-factor authentication? How do we want to organize that? And how can we organize it in a company? We need those people who, what I do a lot, run around as auditors, yeah, or as assessors, or if something has gone wrong, we always need to be hit by ransomware. But I remember we had a few years ago at one of my clients, it was one of the top managers who fell for a phishing email, and put his Active Directory, his Windows password in there. And in no time, the attacker was on his Outlook and was sending emails to everyone in the company, to all kinds of people, business contacts, And it really only got very quickly stopped because M365, at that time it was called Advanced Threat Protection, now it's called Defender, was hitting in and say, hold on, here's something wrong. This guy can't send that many emails in that short time. And anyway, he never does. So they just put the shutters down, and that rescued us there. It still meant that it was like 300 or 400 emails going out, and we had to investigate that. And together with the data protection officer, we also had to investigate what kind of data breaches was, and eventually it had to be reported to the authority. So we need people who spend their time with going into things and say what's gone wrong, how can we do that better, what's and where maybe is something in our systems wrong. Yeah, we will always have weaknesses. The more complex all these systems get, we will always have weaknesses. And as I already said, we need people who educate people. We need people who train. It's not everyone's skill. There's a lot of really good techies who are completely incapable of teaching people or have the patience to sit with people and explain to them what to do and why to do. And all these things I've been talking about here is things that you constantly need to educate people on. You need to keep them on their toes, and you need to have a good positive approach to uh, entice people to get on there. So in that sense, it's also really something. Nobody's junior and too junior for that. Yeah, and I've in this domain, because I struggle to find people here or in my part of the world, but I started out as a software developer. I did exactly this 30 years ago when I had the first big software projects. I would get youngsters on and say, come on, here, you work with me. I teach you how to do that. I can do the tricky stuff. You can do the simpler stuff, and over time you learn more and you work your way up. And we had a whole cascade of people, which that way would come in. They had some work to do, they earned some money, they learned something, and they moved their way through their career. And of course, I've been around 30 years. I've learned the one or other thing in those years. And I had, for example, the same when I went into auditing 20 years ago. I had early on a number of projects where, yes, I was new, but I already had a bit experience, and I had somebody really new in it. But I had a senior in the audit company who I would go to and say, "How do we do that? That's new. I've never done that before. So how do we get to that?" Yeah, and then he would support me, and then let me go. And if there was really tricky stuff, he would take care of that. So this idea of having differently experienced people is a really really worthwhile thing, because it means everybody learns along the way. And of course, as you can see in my example, I've been a lifelong freelancer. You can do that as a freelancer. You can work as a contractor through some consultancies. You can get employment in companies, like banks and so on. Will usually employ people, but sometimes they use contracted resources as well. And of course, especially post COVID, you have to say, we're away from everybody has to sit in the office. There's a lot of stuff that can be done remotely. There's a lot of stuff that can be done hybrid. I mean, same as we do these kind of events remote. There's no need to all fly together in one place and sit in the classroom anymore. For certain things, it still works better. For certain things, it works better to be on site. And that's why I start traveling again post-COVID. But during the whole COVID period, all my jobs went completely remote, and all these areas where I've long since said to people, we can do that remotely, and nobody wanted to hear that. Yeah, said, yeah, we can really do that remotely. So that also gives you, of course, depending where in the world you are, a completely different way of getting access to projects, for example. Yeah, that you wouldn't be. Yeah, for example, where I live here in Lanzarote, quite frankly, nobody's interested in information security. I have no hope in hell anytime soon that I would get any work in my domain here, because we're sitting on a small remote island, and people are not that geared up to that yet. It is very difficult to raise awareness on the very basic thing, but no company will really invest something because there's no big companies here. It's all close. Yeah? Go to Madrid, it gets a bit better, go to UK, go to Germany, Netherlands, France. There's an awful lot more stuff going on. But that way I work with people across Europe and sometimes even intercontinental. Good. Of course, the question always comes for these kind of things, what kind of prerequisites you need. The very first thing, and I always like to stress that really, you need to have an enthusiasm for security. You need to be interested in this, and you need to want to dig in. You want to learn something. Also, especially when you're in a role where maybe you have to deal with security incidents. Unfortunately, hackers don't work 9 to 5. They come at some silly point in time, and you might get an alarm, and then certain people have to jump into action because you need to do something then. They can't wait till tomorrow. I've just talked about this. Yeah, you need to see yourself as a facilitator. You need to enjoy working with people, motivating people, involving people, and you probably notice that the way I talk about these things are second nature to me because I've been doing that for years and years and years. For those people I work with, there's probably a regular epiphany, and hopefully you had the one or other during this talk, where you say, shucks, I never thought about that one. It's so true, but it's never come to my mind. Yeah, and that's the kind of thing we need to do. We need to raise this awareness with people, um, what to do and what not to do. Said already, the whole thing is constantly moving. There's constantly innovation. There's constantly change. There's constantly new threats. Um, so we need to keep on our toes. And I've very deliberately put IT know-how as a last one because it depends very much on what you do. If you want very much to a technical security role, yes, of course, you need a lot of IT know-how. But as you've seen now, there's a lot of other things that are not necessarily so techy. So if you're not the IT freak, and I've never been an IT freak actually, I've fallen more by accident into IT during my uni times, and then got stuck there. And it's not the worst of life, but I'm still I'm not a computer freak who will spend their nights outside projects sitting behind a computer and trying to do something. And I work nowadays much more on that managerial level and training level and develop processes and think about how can we do things. And if I need the techie details that I can't cater for myself anymore, because you can only keep up so long, then I have people I can ask, and that's fine. Yeah, and so that way we share the work and get to something. And finally, I want to talk about a few, in my experience, common misperceptions. So first of all, almost moving on from where we just were, massive know-how required. No, not really. We all start somewhere. We all need to build up experience. And I, because I come from a software development background and I used agile methods very early, probably at a point where it didn't even exist as a word. So this idea of do it in small steps. Yeah, the Germans have a reputation for building these all singing and dancing thing. They even have a word for it when you translate it, and you probably need to think about it. It's called egg laying wool milk sow. Yeah, egg laying wool milk sow, and that is the traditional German approach. It needs to be all perfect, all round straight away. And you get these monster projects that never come to an end. It's a complete wrong approach. Yeah, get somewhere, start something, get something rolling, get it better, get it extended. Yeah, and that's agile thinking, and that doesn't just go for software. That goes for everything in life. Yeah? So experience and keeping learning is much more important than having some glorious degrees and certificates and so on. Then quite often there's probably a sense of if you're coming new into the market, oh, how do I going to stand up to Martin, who's been doing that for 20 years? Don't worry. I've seen that quite often, and it probably can hit me the same. I see it often enough across the industry. Experience can hinder. You have a certain way how you do things, and you don't think left and right anymore. I try to be very on guard and question myself: is there a better way to do it? But there's many people who are very set in their tracks of doing things. So fresh minds create fresh ideas. I'm glad if somebody comes new and say, why don't we do it this way? Great idea. Yeah? Of course, we also all need to start somewhere. I mean, I've not been born as I am now. Yeah, I've been 30 years as a freelancer on the go. So you learn things along the way, and especially if you want to learn things along the way, you do that. And as I said, we have a massive demand and resource in this industry, and we need to keep the ball rolling from generation to generation. It's something I've seen very early on in other industries, where uh, uh, companies were overaging, and you knew full well. And I say this nowadays very often to people because it's in the end information security as well. It's loss of information. When I see a company where 80% of the staff gonna retire in the next 5 years, I say, you better start getting young people in and transfer your know-how, else the company will collapse when you go on retirement. And I've seen that with clients, that they suddenly were unable to produce whatever they were producing because the old guys took the know-how into retirement with them. It wasn't properly written down. It wasn't handed on. Even if it wasn't written down, it wasn't something that people could easily pick up. So we need to keep the ball rolling, and else we start in the next generation at zero again. And it's something I see sometimes already, which reminds me when I started out as a software developer 30 years ago, we really had no one to go to. We didn't, yeah, you had these kind of mainframe developers, but that was a very enclosed industry. So we started writing applications for Windows and things like this. And some of the stuff we did then, I said, oh my God, what did we do then? Then I see sometimes today mobile apps coming up. It's exactly that again. We think, no, we need to pass the knowledge, the experience on from generation to generation, and not with every generation of technology do the same nonsense, the same errors again. And so that's why I'm very, very much in favor of getting fresh blood into the industry and supporting that. And finally, something I come across quite often, and of course, as you all, quite a lot of you, I think, sit in the Caribbean, you quite often get this notion, oh, we can't stand up to the developed countries, and they're way ahead of the game. I can tell you full-hearted that's not the case. For starters, they're often stuck in complacency. They think, oh, we've done that for so long. I've seen that, for example, when the whole communist bloc collapsed and all these countries opened in East Europe. And I was working with companies in Germany and the Netherlands who thought, oh, we've done all this stuff for so many years, nobody can tell us anything. And these guys in the East were so enthusiastic that they overtook the West European guys very quickly because they were fresh, they were enthusiastic, yeah? They really wanted something from life. And so you can move things very much there. And of course, again, something I've seen so often in various areas is in these so-called developed countries, and that's why I don't like the word, because it suggests that they are ahead of the game, and they are not necessarily. You often struggle to overcome legacy stuff, legacy infrastructure, legacy processes, legacy approaches. Yeah? Nice example that I always use, because Lanzarote in a way is a remote place, it's a bit behind times, but we got a few years ago upgraded here on the island to fiber. So the normal standard package here now, and in the rest of Spain the same, which is not a particular high-tech country in the first place, is a 300 meg per symmetric fiber line that I'm having here at home. That is, you can't even get anything slower anymore. Sometimes I come to Germany, and especially in Germany it's shocking, but in the UK it starts as well. And you sit in Germany somewhere and you think, what happened to the internet? And you get really, really, really slow internet connection because they have all this old infrastructure. They haven't maintained it, they haven't upgraded it. As the UK has fallen a bit behind like that as well. They used to be very ahead with internet generally 20 years ago, but then they stopped. They didn't continue moving. So not so developed, yeah, in that same wrong meaning of the word, countries often can actually have a real advantage because there's historically nothing. You start straight right up here, yeah, and you're straight away ahead of the game because new things get put in. You don't have to deal with too much legacy stuff that especially the big Western economies have. where any rollout of everything is demanding. So don't think for one moment, just because you're not coming from a G5 country or something like this, that you can't hold up with them. You very well can. And that's really the end of it. So thanks for joining. And of course, I don't know if there was any questions. I haven't seen any. Or if anyone has any questions or comments now, then of course you're most welcome to throw them in the ring. And I've left you on that last slide here anyway, my details. So feel free to keep in touch. You never know. They always say you always meet each other twice in life. And I'm a big believer in that. And I hope this was enjoyable, enlightening, and insightful. And I hand back over to our hosts and see if there's any other comments.
Yes, if anyone has any questions, y'all could just unmute and ask away.
Mm-hmm. All well filled with information. Oh, you're on mute now. Now you're on.
Okay, so I will start, right? So you said for your phone, you should have it with some kind of malware protection. So are there any apps that you recommend?
It depends a bit on the products, to be honest, because I'm a lifelong non-Apple person. I'm not entirely sure what you get, and Apple for a long time was blocking on that field. As they've come around now. For a long time, they said, "Oh, no, our system is secure. We don't get viruses," and that's not bullshit. What I personally use, and it works very well for me, is Bitdefender. Because that's a cross-platform solution. So it works on Windows, it works on Android, and it has all these features. And you actually get like this thing is called a family license, where you can have X so many devices protected, and it all you can manage it centrally at one point. And there's plenty of other products. But my experience with Bitdefender is actually quite positive. So I quite happily recommend that. Other products, especially like all the big old established one that you have in the Windows world, like for example McAfee and Sophos, and so they're usually not very good on the mobile side. And I think that was one of the things where Bitdefender went into that gap. And I'm like this. I'm a lazy person. I want the same thing on all the systems. I don't want to have one software here and another one there. It's I want one payment per year, and B, I want something which I know and I don't have to on every device look again. Oh, how does it work here? And so Bitdefender is it's a problem with Microsoft, for example. You get Microsoft Defender on Windows, of course, now, and you get that very powerful for all their Windows systems, but it's not very good supporting mobile platforms. Yep, is that it?
Okay, yeah, thank you. Anyone else have any questions? Okay, well, since we have no further questions, we'd like to thank you, Mr. Holze, for sharing your knowledge with us. It was definitely a lot to take in, but it was very valuable. And we look forward to interacting with you sometime in the future.
Absolutely,
So thank you very much.
Okay, Thanks a lot.
Enjoy your weekend, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Have a good weekend, everybody.